I tried to list every animatronic in Five Nights at Freddy's from memory the other day. Got about 11 in before I stalled completely, and then realised I'd somehow skipped Foxy, which is a bit like forgetting your own brother. There are a lot of them, far more than most people realise, because the series has been quietly stacking them up since 2014 and never once stopped. So that's what tonight is. We're going game by game, in release order, through every animatronic in the main series. What they are, how they work, and whatever lore has ended up attached to them. Some of these are icons. One of them is a milk crate with googly eyes. They all get a mention. We're not doing the books tonight, or FNAF World, or Special Delivery. Those deserve their own thing, and I've got plans for them. If you like this sort of thing, subscribing genuinely helps. And that's the last I'll say about it. Otherwise, get comfortable. Nothing loud in here, no rush at all. We're starting in 2014 in a pizzeria with a man about to have a very bad week at work. Freddy Fazbear's Pizza is on paper a completely ordinary place. Family restaurant, arcade cabinets, birthday parties, a stage with a band on it. The sort of business that existed all over the place in the 80s and 90s and mostly went under because the pizza was never really the point. For about 12 hours a day, that's exactly what it is. The other 12 hours are your problem. You're Mike Schmidt. You've taken the night shift, midnight until 6, sat in a small office with 2 doorways, 2 hallway lights, a tablet that cycles through the building's cameras, and a power supply that drains a little every time you use any of it. That's the entire game. Watch, close, conserve, get to 6 in the morning. If the power runs out before then, the lights go off, the doors open, and you get to sit in the dark, listening to Freddy's jingle for a while, before something happens to you. Now, the man on the phone, who everyone just calls Phone Guy, does give you an explanation for why the animatronics are wandering around at night. He says they're left in free roaming mode, so their servos don't lock up, and that their systems read a person without a costume on as a bare endoskeleton, which is against the rules. So naturally they'd want to fix that by stuffing you into a suit. He delivers all of this in the voice of a man reading out a company memo. He doesn't entirely believe himself, which is a lovely bit of writing and probably the single best thing in the first game. It's also not what's actually going on. The real answer is the one the whole franchise ends up being built on. In the mid-80s, several children were murdered at a Freddy Fazbear's location by a man named William Afton, who was a co-founder of the company. He lured them away, killed them, and hid their bodies inside the animatronic suits. Their spirits stayed with the machines. So when Bonnie comes down the hallway at 3 in the morning, it isn't a faulty proximity sensor. It's a dead child who has been in there for years and has decided that any adult in the building will do. And here's the bit that makes it worse. Mike Schmidt is almost certainly not called Mike Schmidt. He's Michael Afton, the killer's son, who has gone and got himself a job at his father's old restaurant for reasons that take about 4 more games to become clear. So the murdered children are in a sense being visited nightly by the family of the man who murdered them. Nobody in the game says this out loud. It just sits there. Right, so the band, 4 of them, and they've been known as the classics ever since, mostly because the series keeps rebuilding them. Bonnie is the blue rabbit on guitar, and the spirit inside him belongs to a boy named Jeremy. Mechanically, every animatronic in this game runs on something called an AI level, a number from 0 to 20 that decides how often it gets a chance to move. Everyone starts at 0 on night 1 and climbs from there, and I mention it now because this system quietly underpins the difficulty of the entire game. Chica's number climbs faster than anyone's. By night 5, he's rolling for a move roughly every 5 seconds, with about a 1 in 4 chance of taking it, and his route through the building is genuinely awkward to follow. You can have him placed comfortably in your head, 2 rooms away, and the next time the tablet comes up, he is stood in your doorway instead. There's no warning laugh, no audio tell, nothing. You just have to be permanently a bit paranoid about the left side of the room. Chica is the chicken backup vocals, and she's the host for Susie, the first of the children Afton took. Her route is more predictable than Bonnie's, but she moves more often than anyone else in the game. And she lingers. She'll sit in the corridor outside your office for what feels like an unreasonable amount of time. She also carries a cupcake with eyes on it, called Mr. Cupcake, who does absolutely nothing. The film gave him a whole violent little scene, and I understand why, but in the original game, he's just decor. Here's a fun detail that only turned up about a decade later. Chica apparently didn't start out as a Fazbear character at all. She was the main attraction at a competing restaurant called Chica's Party World, and she was designed by Fiona Murray, who worked at a place called Murray's Costume Manor. That name is going to come back at the very end of tonight in a big way. At some point, Fazbear got hold of her and stuck her in the band, which does explain why she's the only one of the four whose colour scheme has nothing to do with the others. Freddy leads the band and holds the spirit of a boy called Gabriel, and he works differently to the other two. For the first 3 nights, he mostly stays put. His AI level barely moves off 0, so he's just there, on stage, watching. Then night 4 arrives and he starts walking. Every time he changes room, you hear a laugh, which is your only real way of tracking him, because on camera he's almost impossible to see. He tends to be a pair of glowing eyes in a dark corner and nothing else. He moves in a straight line down the right side of the building, and there's a music box in his chest playing the Toreador March, which is also what you hear in the dark once the power is gone, and there's nothing left to do about it. So if you can hear that song getting louder, you already know. The important difference is that Freddy will never show up at your door when you check the light. He doesn't do that. If he's near the office and you pull up the tablet, he simply walks in while you're not looking. The safest counter is to shut the door based on sound and camera cues. And then there's Foxy, who is possessed by the spirit of Fritz, and who is the reason most people remember this game as stressful rather than just tense. He isn't on the main stage. He's got his own corner, Pirate Cove, behind a curtain, and the sign outside says the attraction is out of order. Foxy inverts the whole camera system. Everyone else punishes you for looking at the tablet too long. Foxy punishes you for not looking at him enough. He rolls to act every 5 seconds, and any roll fails automatically while the camera monitor is up. He moves through 4 visible stages, curtain closed, and nothing showing means you're fine. Then he's peeking out. Then he's fully stood outside the cove and clearly about to do something. Then he's gone, and if you're quick enough to hit camera 2A, you can actually watch him sprinting down the West Hall, and outside of the death screens that is the only footage of a moving animatronic the whole game ever gives you. That one shot does more than most of the jump scares put together. Shut the door, and you hear him hammer on it and stomp back to his cove to start again, minus a bit of your power. Don't shut it, and that's the night. Bonnie is the one you can't track. Foxy is the one that never leaves you alone. Between them, they cover both ways of ruining your evening. There's one more, and he's a strange one. Golden Freddy is a yellow version of Freddy, slumped on the floor with an endoskeleton partially visible inside his suit. He's a springlock suit, which is a design that works as both a costume and an animatronic. The internal parts can be cranked back and locked into the walls of the suit, so a person can climb inside and wear it. Which is a phenomenally bad idea, because if those locks slip, the machinery snaps back into place with a person still in there. In this first game, none of that exists yet. Scott Cawthon has been fairly open about the fact that he was making it up as he went and had no real plan. Golden Freddy is here because he's unsettling, and that's about it. You find him by checking camera 2B, where there's a poster of Freddy that has roughly a 1 in 100,000 chance of flickering into Golden Freddy's face with a child's laugh over it. When that happens, he appears sitting in your office, and if you don't immediately pull up the tablet, you get a unique death screen with black eyes and a scream that sounds like nothing else in the game. Because of all that, most people read him as a hallucination rather than a physical thing in the building. Who's inside him is one of the longest running arguments in the fandom, and I'm not going to pretend it's settled. The most common answer is Cassidy, the fifth of Afton's victims. Another popular one is the crying child from the fourth game, whose name has never been settled since the supporting material has called him at least two different things. I'll go with Evan, mainly so I'm not stopping to caveat it every 10 minutes. There's an argument for Phone Guy ending up in there. There's an argument for a character called Andrew from the Fazbear Frights books, which gained traction when one of those stories got adapted into a game, although how much of that counts as proper canon is very much still up for debate. And the Silver Eyes novels add a boy called Michael Brooks to the pile. The honest position is that Golden Freddy might have one soul in him, or several, or be a container for whatever's left over. Pick whichever you find most interesting, and you're about as correct as anyone else. I'll also mention Endo01, purely so nobody accuses me of skipping it. It's a bare endoskeleton sat on a table in the parts and service room. It occasionally turns its head towards the camera. That's the whole character. It cannot hurt you. Survive all of that and you get night 7, and then a termination notice pinned up on screen. You've been let go for tampering with the animatronics, general unprofessionalism, and odour, which for my money is still the funniest ending in the series, and it went out 3 months before the second game arrived and started complicating everything. The first thing the sequel does is take away everything you had. No doors, that's the big one. The office in the second game has a wide open doorway straight ahead of you and 2 air vents feeding in from either side, and there is no way to physically block any of them. The main power meter is gone too, so there's no overall office power to budget, just your flashlight battery. Instead you get a torch with a battery, which lights up the corridor in front of you, and a Freddy Fazbear head you can pull over your own. Put the mask on when something's in the room, and it reads you as one of them and wanders off. There's also a music box in the prize corner that has to be wound remotely all night, forever, and I'll come back to that because it's attached to the most important to character in the game. That's a genuinely bold redesign for something that shipped 3 months after the original. It also completely changes the feeling. The first game is about hiding behind a wall. The second is about sitting completely exposed and pretending very hard to be furniture. You're Jeremy Fitzgerald this time, same shift, and the year is 1987. And before we go any further, I want to be upfront about something. More of this game's story has been rewritten, quietly dropped, or bolted onto since 2014 than any other entry. I'll flag the shakier bits as we go, but if some of this feels like it doesn't quite line up with what you've heard elsewhere, that's not you misremembering. It genuinely doesn't. The setup is that a murder happened at a location we never actually see. That location shut down, and Fazbear opened a fresh one in 1987 with a new cast. But they kept the old cast in a back room, in pieces. These are the withered animatronics, and they're the same 4 we just met, with the same children still inside them. Withered Bonnie is the most complete of the group in terms of his body, and the least complete in terms of his face because his entire face is missing. There's just an exposed skull structure with wires hanging out. He starts in parts and service, works down the corridor, and comes at you through the left vent. Mask on, and he leaves. Withered Chica is in worse shape, missing her forearms entirely, which leaves her permanently stuck in a pose somewhere between a T and a shrug. It's meant to be horrifying, and it is, right up until you notice she's basically doing a stretch. She's the mirror of Bonnie. Right vent instead of left. Same solution. Withered Freddy came through it better than either of them, and is more or less intact. He takes the main corridor, appears at the end of it, and eventually walks straight into the office. Again, mask. Withered Foxy is also in reasonable condition, and once again, he's the exception. He doesn't do vents. He stands at the end of your hallway, and the mask does nothing to him. which is the sort of detail this series is good at. What works on him is the torch. Flash him a couple of times, and his sensors short out, and he retreats. Get distracted, and he covers the corridor before you finish thinking about it. Golden Freddy has a much bigger role here, and he's tied to the one story beat in this game that has survived every retcon. On the 6th night, Phone Guy calls to ask why you're even still there, because the restaurant is closing. Someone used one of the spare yellow suits, walked into the building, and killed people. And the animatronics have not behaved properly since. That yellow suit is where a lot of arguments start. A fair number of people assume he means Spring Bonnie, the other Springlock suit. But the timing makes that difficult, because Spring Bonnie was locked away 2 years before this game takes place. Meanwhile, the call happens at the exact location where Golden Freddy keeps appearing. Make of that what you will. In-game, he comes at you 2 ways. He'll turn up slumped in your office like before, and the mask makes him slowly fade out. Or you'll flash your torch down the hallway and find an enormous disembodied Golden Freddy head hanging in the air. Flash it again, and the head flies at you. The only counter is to stop looking. Given how little either of those behaviours resembles a machine walking through a building, the general read is that there's a physical Golden Freddy suit somewhere on site, and the thing attacking you is something else wearing its shape. Then we've got the new lot, the toys. The toys are shiny, plastic, deliberately friendly, and fitted with facial recognition software tied to a criminal database, which is a very strange thing to put in a children's entertainer until you remember what happened at the last building. They're also the first animatronics in the series allowed to walk around during opening hours in front of customers, which explains a lot about their later behaviour. They're most likely possessed too by children from a second set of murders, though the game never names any of them, and no later entry has definitively picked that thread back up. Toy Bonnie is the new and improved version of Bonnie, and he's the one that goes for the right vent. Flash the light, catch him poking his head in, mask up, and he glides across your office quite peacefully and leaves. Fail to do that, and he's waiting the instant you lower the tablet. Toy Chica comes through the left vent, and she has one detail everyone remembers. The moment she leaves the show stage, her beak falls off, and her eyes. She spends the entire night wandering the building with no face while still wearing a bib that says, "Let's party." Ask why, and the answer from the man who built her amounts to nothing more than it being unsettling. A simple mechanism, thin lore, but mostly a design choice owned outright. I respect that more than a made-up reason. Toy Freddy, like the other Freddy, is a hallway character. He works his way down the main corridor, stands there looking at you, and then comes in. When he does, his eyes do not go completely black. There is no Toy Foxy, and the reason is a bit sad. Fazbear rebuilt Foxy from the ground up as Funtime Foxy, white and pink and gentle, and rather than putting him on a stage, they built him a play area called Kids Cove, where children were encouraged to handle him directly. What they had not accounted for is that if you let a room full of small children take apart a robot, they will take apart the robot. It happened so often that the staff eventually stopped repairing him and renamed the pile Mangle. Mangle is now a tangle of limbs and wire with 2 heads and no fixed shape, and it hangs from the ceiling. It seems to be made from more than one animatronic, which the later games back up by giving it several different voices. You always know where it is because it broadcasts a loud burst of radio static. It comes in through the right vent, and if it gets past you, it doesn't kill you straight away. It climbs onto the ceiling above your desk and stays there, occasionally lowering its head down to bite. Between that, the year on the calendar, and the fact that it's a free roaming animatronic in a building full of children, an awful lot of people have pinned the notorious bite of 87 on Mangle. Balloon Boy is a small plastic child holding a balloon and a sign, and he is the most hated character in the series by a comfortable margin. He comes up the left vent going hi and hello in a voice that gets steadily less charming. And if he reaches your office, he does not attack you. He sits there. He laughs constantly, which drowns out every audio cue you rely on, and he disables your torch permanently. So you can't check the hallway, which means you can't hold off Foxy, which means Foxy kills you. But he's not a threat. He's a delivery mechanism for other threats. And I think that's a properly clever bit of design, even while I resent it. And then the marionette, or the puppet, who is the reason the music box exists. She's a tall black figure with long limbs, a white mask, and purple tear streaks running down from her eyes. She lives in a present box in the prize corner, and the box plays music. And while that music plays, she stays put. Wind it from the tablet and you're fine. Let it run down and you get a warning. Then a rendition of Pop Goes the Weasel, and at that point the night is effectively over. She's Charlotte Emily, and she's the reason any of this happened. Charlotte was the daughter of Henry Emily, who co-founded the company with Afton, built most of the animatronics, and designed the spring-lock system. In 1983, Afton lost his own son when the Fredbear animatronic bit down on the boy's head at a birthday party. Afton did not take that well, and what curdled in him was not grief exactly. It was resentment that Henry still had a family. So he waited outside a Fazbear location and killed Charlotte in the rain while she was locked out. The security puppet Henry had built specifically to keep track of her reached her too late and collapsed over her body. Whatever she felt in those last moments was strong enough to keep her there. From inside the puppet, she then did something extraordinary. She sought out the other children Afton had killed and tied each of them to a machine, which gave them somewhere to keep being and gave them access to the man who did it. Many of the possessions in this series trace back to her decision, but not all of them. Afton noticed the puppet behaving oddly and started investigating why. That investigation is what turns him from a murderer into something far worse. And we'll get to what he actually found next game, because that's where it properly belongs, which does leave one loose thread that has never been tied. If Charlotte is the one who bound those souls, and the puppet is self-aware enough to talk about itself in later games, why does she attack you at all? You have nothing to do with Afton. Scott has never addressed it, and I've never seen a theory that satisfies me. If you've got one, the comments are right there. Beyond that, the game hides a small collection of things that mostly exist to be found. JJ is a female balloon boy who has a rare chance of appearing under your desk and doing nothing whatsoever. Endo Wyro 2 is another bear endoskeleton, the one the toys are built around, which can turn up in the left vent or the prize corner and can't hurt you because there's nobody in it. Shadow Freddy is a purple, almost black version of Golden Freddy who appears in the back room with a roughly 1 in 200 chance, stares, and crashes your game if you look too long. And Shadow Bonnie, whose actual name in the files is a string of letters I'm not going to attempt out loud, is a black toy Bonnie with white eyes and roughly a 1 in a million chance of appearing in your office. When he does, he watches you, and then your game crashes. That is the rarest thing in Five Nights at Freddy's, and the reward is a crash to desktop. Both of those shadow characters come back later, and the general reading is that they're less characters than symptoms. Manifestations of what Afton is doing and what it's costing. There's also the Paper Pals, which are 3 little paper cutouts that live in Party Room 4 and have a small chance of showing up, taped to your office wall. Nobody has ever explained how they move. They've turned up in about 5 games since. After all this, Jeremy gets moved to a day shift. A man named Fritz Smith takes over and gets fired within 1 night for the exact same reasons Mike did. The location closes for good shortly afterwards. Most of the toys get scrapped. Fazbear moves back into the original building, and the Wizards get refurbished into the classics, we met in the first game. Then that location shuts too, and the company goes quiet for 30 years. 30 years is long enough for anything to stop being a tragedy and start being a story. That's the whole idea behind the third game, and I think it's the smartest premise in the series. By 2023, nobody remembers Freddy Fazbear's Pizza as a place where children died. They remember it as a rumour, a creepypasta, something teenagers argue about on forums. So a company builds a horror attraction called Fazbear's Fright, stuffs it with salvaged animatronic parts, old arcade cabinets, and genuine memorabilia, and sells tickets to walk through it. They were so committed to authenticity that they built the thing with salvaged artifacts from the original restaurant. You're the night guard. You have no name. Later games have gone out of their way to leave that blank, and the current position seems to be that it could be anyone, or nobody at all. The mechanics change again, and this time in a direction I've always liked more than most people. There's no power meter and no battery. Instead, the building runs on 3 maintenance systems: cameras, audio, and ventilation. Any of them can fail, and each failure takes something away. Lose cameras and you're blind. Lose audio and you're deaf. Lose ventilation, and the room starts filling with something that isn't quite oxygen. And if you leave it too long, you black out on the spot and wake up with company. You reboot systems from a maintenance panel, which takes time you don't really have. You've got no office door. What you do have is the ability to play a recorded audio clip in any room of the building, and vent hatches you can seal. The first night, nothing happens, because on the first night, there's nothing in the building. Then the staff open a room that had been sealed shut and find something inside that they assume is a prop. It isn't. It's Springtrap, and Springtrap is William Afton. Here's how that happened, and this is the piece that makes sense of everything, either side of it. After Afton killed Charlotte and watched the puppet behave in ways a machine should not behave, he became fixated on a single question. She died, and something of her stayed. He wanted to know what that something was, and whether it could be captured. What he settled on is called remnant, and it's the closest thing this series has to a rule. Remnant is what happens when a person dies near metal with enough force of feeling behind it. The metal keeps the memory. It keeps the personality. Given enough of it, it keeps the person, which means his murders were never really about the murders. He was gathering material. He would put on the Spring Bonnie suit, because a mascot can go anywhere in a restaurant without a single adult looking twice, lure children away, kill them, and then wedge their bodies as close to the endoskeletons as he could manage. After the first 5 went missing, the suit got sealed in a safe room in 1985. When the company moved back into the old building after the bite in 87, he had it again. And then, sometime after the original location shut down in 1993, he came back one last time on a night when it was absolutely hammering down with rain. He tore every animatronic apart to get at what was inside them. What he had not accounted for is that dismantling the machines does not dismantle what's in them. The children came out, all of them at once, and cornered him. So he did the only thing he could think of. He climbed into Spring Bonnie and started laughing at them. The rain had got into the suit. The spring locks let go all at once, and the entire mechanism snapped shut around him. He bled out slowly on the floor of a sealed room while the building emptied out around him, and then the room was boarded over and forgotten with him still in it. The horrible part is that it worked. He wanted to know if a person could persist in a machine, and he found out from the inside. Whatever was left of William Afton became remnant, and remnant kept him. 30 years later, when the crew at Fazbear's Fright pry that room open, what they pull out is a mummified corpse in a rotting green rabbit suit that has been alive the entire time and is now extremely interested in the fact that somebody has opened the door. In game, he hides. He tucks himself into corners and shadows where the camera struggles to pick him up. And quite often, the only thing you'll spot is a pair of eyes. He also gives every impression of knowing he's being watched, which no animatronic before him has done. To move him away from you, you play an audio clip of Balloon Boy's voice in a distant room, and he goes to investigate it, presumably because he thinks there are children in there. 30 years and he hasn't changed a bit. He can climb into the vents, and if you don't seal the right hatch, he'll get close enough that no amount of clicking is going to help. And whatever they did to his death sound, I'd like it on record that it was unnecessary. Genuinely excellent work. Completely unnecessary. He is the only real animatronic in the building, but he is not alone in it. The phantoms are burnt, greenish, hollowed-out versions of animatronics from the previous 2 games, and none of them physically exist. According to a story in the Fazbear Frights books called What We Found, they're projections that Springtrap generates, in much the same way Shadow Freddy and Shadow Bonnie seem to be projections of something else. That's a book explanation rather than something the game states, so take it as the best available answer rather than gospel. What supports it is that they only ever show up once he's roaming. None of them can end your night. What they do is break your systems, which is arguably worse, because it hands Springtrap the building. Phantom Freddy walks past your office window every so often, and the correct response is to ignore him completely and look at literally anything else. Phantom Chica shows up as a face on an arcade screen on camera 7. Phantom Foxy skips the theatrics and simply appears in the office, stood by a box of old toy parts, waiting for you to acknowledge him. Phantom Mangle turns up on camera 4, and if you don't switch away, pops over your window and plays that radio static at a volume that should probably come with a warning. Phantom Puppet floats in the middle of camera 8, and if you linger, she comes and stands directly in front of your face, blocking the entire screen for an uncomfortably long stretch. And Phantom Balloon Boy can appear on any camera at all, filling it completely, and unlike his first appearance, this one does actually scream at you. The pattern with all of them is the same. Look away in time, and nothing happens. Don't, and something breaks. Usually the ventilation, which is how most people die in this game, without ever seeing Springtrap coming. There's a shadow cupcake wandering about as a small extra, and the paper pals are back on the wall, because of course they are. I'll be straight with you about this game. The story in it is among the best in the series, and the way it recontextualizes the first 2 games is properly satisfying. The gameplay's not good. You can, if you're patient, keep Springtrap parked in one corner of the building for an entire night, using nothing but the audio lure, and the fact that the optimal strategy is that boring tells you most of what you need to know. It's the most divisive entry until security breach comes along. After night 6, the attraction burns down, either because a ventilation fault sparked something, or because somebody wanted it gone. What happens to the guard is never said, but if you brighten the newspaper clipping in the ending screen, you can just about make out Springtrap standing in the wreckage. Scott sold this one as the final chapter of a trilogy. Plenty of people were happy with that. Plenty of people were not. 4 months later, the series went back to the very beginning. A child's bedroom. That's the setting. Not an office, not a security desk, a bed, a wardrobe, 2 doorways, a torch, and a small boy who's been left alone in a house that is very obviously not empty. After 3 games of sitting behind a desk with a job to do, that swap does more work than any new mechanic could have. We're in 1983. The minigames between nights follow a boy the fandom calls the crying child, and who the wider material has labelled both Evan and Dave at different points, because apparently one name was too straightforward. I'll stick with Evan. He is Afton's youngest. He is bullied relentlessly by his older brother and his brother's friends, and he is petrified of the animatronics at his father's diner. Specifically, the springlock suits, because he's convinced he once saw a person being eaten by one. What he actually saw was an employee climbing into one, which is arguably worse when you know what those things do. The nights themselves are Michael Afton's dreams, in which he imagines himself as his brother. That's confirmed by the character encyclopedia and the survival logbook, as well as by evidence in the game itself, which is very much how this franchise operates. It also means that none of the animatronics you meet here are possessed. They aren't real. They're a guilty teenager's brain doing what guilty brains do, which is why they look the way they do. Because they are hideous, enormous, over-detailed, far too many teeth, all of them wet-looking and wrong. It's the ugliest set of designs in the series, and I mean that as high praise. Nightmare Bonnie in particular looks like somebody described a rabbit to an illustrator over a bad phone line. The way you survive is by listening. You walk to a door, hold your ear to it, and if you hear breathing, you slam it. If you don't hear breathing, you shine the torch down the corridor to push whatever's out there back. Get that the wrong way round, and you're finished. And I'll say this plainly. The breathing is too quiet. It is genuinely, unhelpfully quiet. And if you're playing without headphones, you may as well be guessing. I don't think that's a design flaw exactly, but it's the single most common reason people bounce off this one. Nightmare Bonnie lives exclusively in the left corridor. Nightmare Chica takes the right, and she comes with her own Nightmare Cupcake, which, unlike Mr. Cupcake back in the original, does have teeth and will occasionally do the job for her. Both of them are active from night 1 through 4, and both of them work identically otherwise, which is unusual for this series, and does make the early nights a bit of a metronome. Nightmare Foxy is the interesting one, and he's a lovely callback. He becomes active on night 2, and he doesn't start in the wardrobe. He starts out in the wardrobe, and if you catch a glimpse of him, he'll do the same full sprint he used to do down the West Hall in the original game. If you fail to hold him off, he doesn't kill you. He moves into your wardrobe and stays there for the rest of the night, which is a bit like an eviction in reverse. Once he's in there, he cycles through stages, and again it echoes Pirate Cove. Open the wardrobe and find a Foxy plush sitting on the shelf, and you're fine. Find him stood upright, and you've got time. Find him crouched with his face visible, and you really ought to deal with it. Find him leaning out and growling, and you need to shut that door immediately, because the next stage is him leaving the wardrobe, and there's no stage after that. Holding the door closed gradually pushes him back to being a plush toy, which is a genuinely charming detail in a game with nothing else charming in it. Then there's the bed. Every so often you have to turn around and look at it, and if there's a Freddy plush sitting there, all's well. If there isn't, there'll be somewhere between 1 and 3 tiny Freddy heads on your pillow instead. Those are the Freddles. Torch them and they scatter. 1 or 2 go quickly, 3 of them take their time, and the longer they sit there, the closer Nightmare Freddy gets to assembling himself in the corner of your room, at which point he's coming whether you like it or not. After night 4, all 4 of them stop showing up, and the game replaces them with Nightmare Fredbear, who is a golden, ruined version of the animatronic from Fredbear's Family Diner. He's essentially an exam. He'll use either corridor, so you need everything you've learned about listening. When he laughs, a head turns up on the bed or in the wardrobe. No body attached to it, just the head, and you deal with it accordingly. And if you hear footsteps alongside that laugh, it means he could be anywhere in the house. Night 6 runs the original 4 until 4 in the morning, and then hands the rest of the shift to Fredbear. Night 7 replaces Fredbear with something called Nightmare, who is essentially the same silhouette rendered in near total black, semi-transparent, with gold teeth. He's meant to be the same thing Shadow Freddy was hinting at, which is Afton's cruelty given a shape. He's faster at the doors, he uses the same laugh and bed and wardrobe pattern, and he throws in the occasional fake laugh just to waste your time. His kill isn't a jump scare so much as a face filling the screen with a grinding metal noise while the game restarts itself. There's also Plush Trap, who deserves a mention because he's the only one you meet outside a night. He's a small nightmare version of a Spring Bonnie plush, and he lives in a hallway minigame called Fun with Plush Trap. He sits on a chair at the far end, the lights go out, and you have to listen to him moving and flick the torch on at the exact moment he's standing on a white X marked on the floor. 90 seconds to manage it. Get it right, and you start the next night at 2 in the morning instead of midnight, which is a substantial reward. Get it wrong, and he steals your chance at that 2-hour skip and screams in your face. The Halloween update added reskins rather than new characters, and everything behaves exactly as before. Jacko Bonnie and Jacko Chica are hollow and lit from inside like lanterns. Nightmare Mangle turns up as a proper single character for once. Night Marion is the puppet reimagined as a long-limbed thing with spikes. And Plush Trap gets swapped out for Nightmare Balloon Boy, who I would like to formally file a complaint about. All of these were assumed to be seasonal fun and nothing more. Several of them are canon now. We'll get to that. The ending is the reason this game exists. The crying child's brother and his friends, wearing animatronic masks, pick him up at a birthday party and hold him up to Fredbear's mouth as a joke. The joke is that they'll let him get a proper look at the thing he's afraid of, and then the jaw comes down. It isn't a horror set piece, it's a group of children doing something stupid and a mechanism doing exactly what mechanisms do. Evan dies, Michael carries it for the rest of his life, and every single thing he does across the rest of the series is downstream of that afternoon. The diner shuts, the spring lock suits get retired. Fazbear builds Freddy, Bonnie and Foxy, buys Chica from elsewhere, and opens Freddy Fazbear's Pizza. And Henry, who has no idea what his business partner did to his daughter, stays on at the company. This one also got marketed as the last chapter, and honestly, it felt like it. There was a film in the works to tie things off, books going into production, and Scott put a thank you image on his website with a whole cast on it, then made FNAF World as a bit of fun. Everyone settled in to wait. That lasted about 18 months. Sister Location is the second game in the series that isn't a game about sitting still. You get out of the chair, you crawl through vents, you walk across rooms in the dark, you carry out maintenance on things that are awake while you do it. There's voice acting throughout. There's a proper structure to the nights, and it is by a wide margin the best directed entry in the franchise. It also had the most development time of anything since the original, and you can feel every extra month of it. Here's what happened in the gap. After the children went missing in 1985, Afton wasn't confident that Freddy's would ever reopen, but he had no intention of stopping the work. So he set up a separate company, Afton Robotics, and opened a rental business called Circus Babies Entertainment and Rental, which sent animatronics out to children's parties. And for that business, he built the Fun Times. The Fun Times are a different class of machine entirely. They've got proper artificial intelligence with distinct personalities capable of holding a conversation and making their own decisions unless something specifically overrides them. They've got faceplates that split open into segments to make maintenance easier, which is a sensible engineering choice that happens to look absolutely appalling. Their facility is underground, and every single one of them has a feature list where the last few items are for capturing children. Then, after the original pizzeria shut down, in 1993, Afton went back and stripped the classics for parts. That's the same night we talked about last game, the one that ended with him in a rabbit suit. What he took, he brought down here. He melted the old endoskeletons, extracted what was in them, and injected it into the Fun Times, which is why these machines are so unnervingly alive. There are people in them, in pieces, distributed between bodies. Only Baby is a single soul on her own. You play as Michael Afton, and his reason for taking the job is beautifully simple. His father has vanished and nobody will tell him where. Circus Baby is the centre of all this, and gets startlingly little screen time. She's a clown girl with red pigtails, and her published features are almost all delightful. She can dispense ice cream from a compartment in her stomach. She can inflate balloons through her fingertips. She takes song requests and can sing anything you ask for. And then there's the Claw, which is also in her stomach, and which activates automatically when a child is standing alone in front of her. She was on stage precisely once. She did what she was built to do, and it worked. And the child she took was William Afton, her own creator's daughter, who had been told to stay away from her, and who did not. After that, she was moved to a room of her own and never allowed out again. Elizabeth didn't survive, and she went into Baby the same way everyone else went into everything else. But Baby already had a personality of her own, and what came out of the two of them merging is genuinely unsettling. She's cold, she's patient, she lies constantly and well, and she has exactly one goal, which is to get out of that facility and back above ground, into the life Elizabeth had. In the actual game, you meet her once on night 2 during a parts and service job where you have to follow her instructions to retrieve a card so she can keep talking to you. She isn't even in the custom night. She spends the whole game as a voice, which is the correct choice, and I'll defend it. She's accompanied by the Biddy-Babs, small crawling animatronic infants, who show up on night 2 while you're hiding under a desk. They come at the door and try to work it open, and you have to hold it shut. In the custom night, they attack through the vent directly ahead of you, and if you hear metal scraping, you close it and they leave. Ballora is the fun-time ballerina, and her feature list is the clearest example of what I mean about these things. Audio sensors, so she responds to sound. A balance detector and a collision detector, which for a ballerina is entirely reasonable. A music box that doesn't appear anywhere in her blueprints at all. And the ability to distract and occupy an adult so that a child can be separated from them. On night 2, you have to cross Ballora Gallery in the dark while she's in it. Move slowly and quietly, and she doesn't notice. Move quickly, and she absolutely does. You track her by the music box, so when it gets loud, you stand completely still and wait. It's the tensest 3 minutes in the game, and there is nothing on screen but a corridor. In the custom night, she works both hallways. Same music box rule. Close the door on whichever side she's on. She's also the one who kills you if the power runs out. She's got mini-renas with her, which are exactly what they sound like. Small ballerinas. On night 4, you're trapped inside a spring-lock suit while they try to climb in with you, and you have to wiggle to shake them off. That sequence was so brutal on release that it had to be patched to be easier, which is a rare admission from this series. They come back twice in the custom night, once to drain your oxygen canister, which you fix with a controlled shock, and once to sit on your screen and giggle and block your view. There is no counter to the second one. Up to 5 of them can pile on at once. You simply live with it. Funtime Freddy is pink and white, and has a Bonnie hand puppet, and his brief is much the same as Baby's. He has a proximity detector to count the children in the room. He can imitate voices, and there's a claw and a storage cavity in his chest. He turns up on night 2 in the breaker room, and that sequence is the best thing in the game, and possibly the series. You're restoring power in the dark, and every so often the light kicks on for a second and illuminates the room, and Freddy is a bit closer than he was. When he gets too close, you play a recording of Bon Bon's voice through a handheld speaker, and he calms down and goes back. Fail and he gets you, and then you have to crawl through Ballora's gallery all over again to get back, which is a punishment with real teeth. In the custom night, he throws Bon Bon at you. Listen to what he says. If it's along the lines of "go get him," close the door on his side. If he promises a surprise, Bon Bon is coming from the other side entirely. Bon Bon detaches from his arm and moves independently. On night 2, his voice is your protection. On night 3, the roles flip completely. Freddy is inactive, and you're repairing him, and Bon Bon is the threat, popping up while your hands are busy. You keep a torch on him and press the button on his belly to shut him down for a few seconds at a time, over and over, until the job's finished. There's also Bonnet, a pink version of him who first appears in the custom night, and who shuffles across your screen from the right. You boop her nose to switch her off. That is the actual mechanic. Funtime Foxy is white and pink and works a bit like Mangle did if Mangle had been finished properly. Extremely sensitive light sensors, voice copying, the ability to repeat phrases it has overheard, a floor anchor for holding onto things, and a scent release function that I have never once seen explained. On night 3, you cross the Funtime auditorium by flashing your beacon intermittently to see where Funtime Foxy is as you move toward the door. Flash too often or too rarely, and you get the same result either way, and regardless of how well you do, once you've finished repairing Freddy, Foxy takes you anyway, because the story needs you in a springlock suit for night 4. In the custom, Night Foxy hides behind a curtain on camera 7 and runs 5 stages, which is Pirate Cove all over again. And I don't think that's an accident for a second. Which brings us to Ennard. Before your last shift, all of the Funtimes gathered in a room called the Scooping Room and removed their own endoskeletons. Then they assembled the parts into one new thing, with Baby running it. Ennard is a mass of wiring and mismatched limbs, wearing a crude clown mask, and it has one plan. It wants you in that scooping room. It wants your organs out, and then it wants to climb inside you and wear you out of the building. They've tried to leave before. Animatronics get noticed. A man does not. And that is the canon ending. You get scooped, Ennard puts you on, and walks out. If you disobey Baby and go to the private room instead, you get a security office and the classic formula for the only time in the game. Keep Ennard out until 6. Every squeak means it has moved. It talks the whole way through, first as Baby, then later as Elizabeth. And when 6 o'clock arrives and you think you're safe at home, it drags itself in through your living room. There's a handful of others. Yendo is an endoskeleton resembling Funtime Freddy, with yellow eyes widely assumed to be a scrapped Funtime Fredbear, and he phases in and out of your office, draining oxygen, which is Golden Freddy's behaviour, with extra steps. Lolbit is a recoloured Funtime Foxy who appears on your monitor with a please stand by card, freezing every control you have until you type LOL on the keyboard. An Electrobab is a Bidybab with glowing eyes who hides in a wardrobe and drains your power until you shock it. After the final custom night, Ennard climbs out of Michael and leaves him in an alley, looking every bit as dead as he should be. And then he stands up. He's purple now, and rotting, and completely unable to die, because the scooper pumped him full of the one substance in this universe that doesn't let you. His voice comes over the top of it. He's going to find his father. Behind him, Springtrap walks out of the ashes. That was the first game in years that promised a sequel, instead of an ending. What arrived next was not what anybody expected. Everybody thought this one was a joke. It arrived free with a title that sounded like a gag, and an opening that is genuinely a browser game about making pizzas, with a chirpy little tutorial character explaining the controls. A lot of people assumed it was another FNAF world, a bit of fun between proper releases. It is, in fact, the game that was written to end the entire story, and it is one of the best things Scott ever made. You're Michael Afton again, sometime after the events at Fazbear's Fright. So we're in 2023 or thereabouts. The structure is split in half. By day you run a franchise, you buy attractions, decorate the floor, deal with lawsuits, and try to keep your rating up while spending money you don't have. By night, a scrapped animatronic turns up in the alley behind your building, and you get a choice. Throw it back out or salvage it for parts and money. Salvaging pays well. Salvaging also means that thing is now loose inside your restaurant, permanently, and you still have to complete your nightly admin while it hunts you. The threat model here is uniform, so I'll explain it once and then leave it alone. Everything hostile in this game tracks sound. Your computer makes noise. Your air conditioning makes noise. Your ventilation makes noise. To stay alive, You play audio in distant parts of the building to pull them away, while managing how loud your own office is and checking a printout to work out where everything currently is. It's tense in a very different way to the earlier games because you're not defending a door, you're doing paperwork while something walks around your workplace. All of it is being quietly orchestrated by Henry Emily, who has one objective: gather every haunted Fazbear animatronic ever made into one building so he can destroy them and free the children trapped inside. Right, the cast, and there's a lot of it. I'll group them because it's the only sane way through. Helpy is your guide, a small chibi funtime Freddy who explains the tycoon systems, runs your minigames, and sits on top of your monitor at night doing absolutely nothing threatening. He's just a nice little bloke, and I'm glad he's here. Then there are the rock stars who mostly exist in the tycoon half, but Rockstar Freddy can appear in your office and hurt you. Rockstar Freddy is a mash of the classic and toy designs, fronting the band. Rockstar Chica is the same idea, and notably her cupcake is gone, and she's on maracas instead, which is a downgrade in my book. Rockstar Bonnie is on an electric guitar, and Rockstar Foxy is one of the few in the entire series, a Foxy who isn't ripped apart or rotting. He's clean, there's a green parrot on his shoulder, and for once nobody has parked him in a side room behind a curtain. He's on stage with everyone else, playing an accordion. After 4 games of watching that character be treated like a mistake, seeing him properly employed genuinely got me. The salvageables are where the story lives. Scrap Baby is the first one at your door, and she's Circus Baby, rebuilt out of whatever was to hand, with an enormous claw for an arm. After Sister Location, Baby and Elizabeth were pushed out of Enard and left to put themselves back together, and she has been lured here. Molten Freddy is what Enard became once she left. With Baby gone, the dominant personality inside it defaulted to Funtime Freddy, so the mask on the front is roughly his. Underneath is a spill of wire and limbs on the floor. He's often theorised to hold all 5 of the missing children at once. Lefty is the strange one, and the most interesting thing in the game. He's a black Rockstar Freddy missing his left eye, and you can either buy him at auction for $5 or find him in the alley. Lefty was built by Henry, and the name is an acronym: Lure, Encapsulate, Fuse, Transport, Extract. He was made for one job, which was catching the puppet and bringing her here, and by the time you meet him, she's already inside. His remaining eye emits a frequency that keeps her calm, and he carries a device that plays a lullaby to help with that. He is, functionally, a man's attempt to carry his daughter home. He is also aggressive and will kill you, because she is in there, and she does not want to be. And Scraptrap, who is Afton again, patched together out of scavenged parts after the fire. Unlike Springtrap, you can clearly see the human remains through the gaps, and the sculpting of it is genuinely rough. Springtrap is one of the great horror designs. Scraptrap looks like a Halloween decoration that got left in a shed. It's the one visual downgrade in the series that I can't defend. Then there's the silly section, and it's a real relief valve. Trash and the gang are a set of objects that Fazbear has decided count as entertainers. Bucket Bob wears an upturned bucket and a pair of oven gloves over a frame that is structurally twigs. Pan Stan has gone with cookware instead. Mr. Can-Do is a wheelie bin that has been issued 2 planks and a balloon. Mr. Hugs used to be somebody's vacuum cleaner, and rounding it off is a crate with eyes on it, holding up 2 foam fingers. None of them are possessed. None of them are technically animatronics. None of them come back in later games, which says something about this franchise that I find quite lovely. The Mediocre Melodies are a cheaper band you can buy before the rock stars unlock. There's Orville the Elephant, an orange magician who seems to lead them. Pig Patch, a country pig with a banjo and 2 different coloured eyes. Happy Frog, who sings and who is a happy frog. Ned Bear, who has a top hat mounted on a spring and a lazy eye and gives every impression of not being all there. And Mr. Hippo, who is meant to be Orville's best mate and right-hand man, and who does virtually nothing in this game and became a legend in the next one. Here's the detail that changes how you read them. We now know these designs came out of Murray's Costume Manor, drawn up by Fiona Murray, the same person behind Chica. A group of employees, Afton among them, took the designs and walked. Fazbear passed on them, so those employees went off and founded their own outfit, called Stan's Budget Tech, and made them anyway, which reframes the mediocre melodies from a joke band into stolen work. And I did not see that coming from a group whose defining feature is a hippo. The posh pizzeria set are all animatronics that didn't originate at Fazbear either. El Chip is a Mexican-themed beaver with a mandolin on loan from his own restaurant, El Chip's Fiesta Buffet, and he's a nod to a character from one of Scott's much older games. Music Man is a huge round head on spider legs, holding a pair of cymbals, and he looks like a fun time, and he goes on to be far more important than anything about him here suggests. And Funtime Chica, who never appeared in Sister Location at all and turns up here in pink and white with her own cupcake. Beyond the groups, there's a scattering of odds and ends. Candy Cadet dispenses sweets and tells stories, and most of the time, the stories are nonsense. Rarely, he tells you about 5 things that were pulled apart and put back together as one thing, which is Ennard and Molten Freddy explained in the format of a bedtime story, and he pulls that trick again in later games. There's the security puppet, and buying it unlocks the minigame that shows Charlotte's death and possession. Watch the mask in that minigame. It has no tears on it. The tears only appear afterwards. That's a physical marker of possession, and when the puppet turns up again years later without them, it means something. I think it's the best single piece of visual storytelling in the whole series. The rest is quick. Prize King looks like a gumball machine and pays out little toys instead. The Fruit Punch Clown and the Lemonade Clown are a matching pair, and both serve drinks out of their own midsections, which I have chosen not to examine. Egg Baby is a nesting doll built as an animatronic, so there is a smaller one of her inside her, and nobody has explained that either. The Neon Jukebox has had a face fitted to it, and Gumball Swivel Hands has a face and a pair of arms, and should probably have been filed with the bin men above. And the Paper Pals are here as well, because they always are. There's also Scrap Chica, who was cut. She's documented in the survival logbook and clearly existed at some point, and that's the whole story. The ending is why people talk about this game. Henry has everything in one place. Baby, Molten Freddy, the puppet inside Lefty, Afton, himself, and Michael. And he sets the entire building on fire while delivering a speech that is genuinely well written, addressed partly to Charlotte, partly to Elizabeth, and mostly to Afton, and he does not raise his voice. Once he tells his daughter she can rest, he apologizes to Charlotte, and he tells William very calmly exactly where he hopes he ends up. At the time, that was it. Every soul released, every loose thread that mattered handled, and the whole thing closed out by a man who'd been carrying it since 1983. There were still questions. There always are. But as endings go, it was pretty much perfect, and I don't think anyone would have complained if the series had stopped right there. There's a small structural thing about this series that I've always liked. Every game has its own number of nights. Some games have 5 that carry the story, a 6th that adds something extra, and a 7th that's the custom night, where you set everyone's difficulty yourself and see how long you last. 6 months after Pizzeria Simulator, Scott released a standalone custom night. Count the releases up to that point, and you land on 7, with the 7th being a custom night, the shape of a single playthrough, scaled up to the size of a franchise. Whether that was planned or a happy accident, it's a satisfying place for the story to have stopped. and the framing is properly nasty. You play as William Afton in whatever comes after death, in a room with 50 animatronics who all want a turn. Everything here is a return, so I'm not going to re-explain how any of these characters work. What I'll do instead is go through what's changed, because the changes are where the personality is. And the personality in this game is enormous, because almost every animatronic in it behaves like an unruly child rather than a threat. First, the systems. You've got power, which drains. You've got a heater and an air conditioning unit, because a good chunk of the roster reacts to temperature. You've got a noise meter, because another chunk reacts to sound, and several of them exist purely to make noise and set the first group off. You've got hallways, side vents, and air ducts, which are 3 separate systems with 3 separate defences: doors, vent doors, and duct snares. And you've got Faz coins, which appear randomly and which you can collect. 10 of them buys a death coin from the prize counter, which permanently removes 1 animatronic from your night. Only certain ones can be removed, and choosing which is a real decision. You also pick 1 power-up before you start. A power reserve that begins you at 102%, a repellent for DD, a cold office, or 3 coins up front. DD is the one you'll want the repellent for. She originally appeared in FNAF World, and here she has a roughly 1 in 10 chance of turning up every 45 seconds. When she does, she sings a short, insufferable little song about how she's about to make your life harder, and then either raises 1 animatronic's difficulty or adds a completely new one to your night at level 1. So you might have set up a careful run with 4 characters, and now there's a 5th in it that you didn't plan for. She can also pull from a list of secret animatronics who aren't in the main roster at all. In the hardest configuration, she gets replaced by XOR, who is a shadow version of her, and who is worse in every way. She shows up early in 50-20 mode, and only very rarely in other runs, sings a distorted version of the same song, and adds all 6 secret animatronics in quick succession. The repellent doesn't work on her. She can also show up in a normal run, at about 1 in 1,000, and do exactly the same thing. I've had it happen, it's not a good time. Old Man Consequences isn't an animatronic, and he's also from FNAF World. He appears occasionally with a tiny fishing minigame. Catch the fish and he leaves. Miss it and your monitor locks for a moment. He looks like a gag. He isn't. If you set every single character to 0 and him to 1, you get taken to his pond, where he tells you to rest and to leave the demon to his demons, and the minigame ends with you walking the little Freddy into the lake as the game closes. Nobody found that quickly. Fredbear is a genuinely new animatronic, and he appears in his standard, undamaged form for the first time in the series. You can't select him. You have to set Golden Freddy to 1 with nothing else active, at which point the game lets you use a death coin on him, which it normally refuses. Do it, and Fredbear appears and kills you. I take that as Scott confirming, about as clearly as he ever does, that Fredbear and Golden Freddy are the same thing. Now the roster by home game. From the original, Freddy comes down the right hall and moves faster when you aren't watching him on camera, so you close the right door on him. Bonnie and Foxy share Pirate Cove, and there's a figurine on your desk telling you which of them is currently in there. If it's Bonnie, do not look at the cove, because looking at it annoys him, and he starts screaming, which temporarily disables all of your camera feeds. If it's Foxy, you must check it. Or instead of sprinting at you, he assembles himself in your office piece by piece, which is a horrible mental image and a great mechanic. Chica is in the kitchen and has to be soothed with a music tune, but she gets bored of the same song, and you know she's bored when the clattering of pots stops. From the second game, Toy Freddy is sat playing Five Nights at Freddy's on a console. In Five Nights at Freddy's, his fingers are too big for the buttons, so you have to close the doors in his game remotely so he doesn't get jump scared. It is a magnificent piece of nonsense. Toy Bonnie and Toy Chica work as they always did. The mask, except this time you have to actually look at them while wearing it. Mangle is in the air ducts, and you throw a snare down the duct system. If it sees the snare, it turns around, and if you time it as it crosses, you send it back to the start. Balloon Boy takes a side vent, and you shut the vent door until you hear him bump into it. JJ finally gets a purpose, using the other side vent, and if she gets in, she hides under your desk and disables your doors entirely. The Withereds only partly show up. Withered, Chica uses the ducts like Mangle, and if she gets through, she jams in the vent and blocks everyone else, which sounds great until you learn she has a small chance every second to end you anyway. Withered Bonnie appears in the office and needs the mask. Withered Freddy and Withered Foxy sat this one out. The marionette needs her music box wound, which will never not be her mechanic, and Golden Freddy is primarily countered with the mask, not reliably with the monitor. From the third, Springtrap uses the ducts, ignores snares entirely, and has to be blocked with the door when his face appears at the window. Which raises a question, given that we are supposedly Afton, and so is he. The game offers nothing on this, and I've stopped waiting. Phantom Mangle appears on your monitor and you shut it. Phantom Freddy appears in the office and needs the torch, and he shows up more when the room is warm. Phantom Balloon Boy behaves like Phantom Mangle, but fades your screen to black instead of making noise. Phantom Chica and Phantom Foxy didn't make the cut. From the fourth, Nightmare. Freddy fills your office with Freddles, and when there are 7 of them, he arrives. Torch them. Nightmare Bonnie and Nightmare Mangle both work in a way I find genuinely funny, which is that when they appear in your hallway, you have to go and buy their plush toy from the prize counter. Not close a door. Buy a toy. The door does nothing. Nightmare. Fredbear takes the left door, and Nightmare takes the right, and those are straightforward. Jacko Chica shows up when the office gets hot, at both doors at once, and above 100 degrees, the doors stop stopping her. Nightmarian kills you if you leave your cursor sitting on her too long, and you can tell how close she is by how solid she looks. And Nightmare Balloon Boy sits on your desk, and if he's sitting upright, you torch him to reset him, and if he isn't, you must not torch him, which is the sort of rule you only learn by getting it wrong. That Halloween cast being here at all is significant. Those were widely assumed to be a bit of seasonal fun, with no bearing on anything. Putting them in the roster nudged them towards being real. From sister location, Circus Baby finally gets a proper playable appearance, and her mechanic is buying her plush. Ballora works the left hall with her music exactly as she did before. Funtime Foxy is the most interesting thing in the game, because his curtain displays a showtime. If you don't check the curtain at the moment the show starts, that's your run. It's the only animatronic in FNAF that tells you precisely when it's going to attack, and having a clock on it does something to your head that no amount of randomness manages. Ennard uses the ducts, doesn't appear on the duct radar, and ignores snares, so all you get is that metallic squeak at your vent door. And Pizzeria Simulator takes 18 of the 50 slots on its own. Trash and the gang turn up to be a nuisance, and nothing more. Mr. Can-Do sticks himself over random cameras to block the view. Number 1, Crate appears in your office, whispers, and hits you with a bass-boosted jump scare that doesn't actually end anything. Helpy shows up on your desk and you have to click him fast, or he blasts an air horn, which wakes up everything noise-sensitive, which makes him technically a threat, and I do feel a bit betrayed. The mediocre melodies finally get something to do, and they use the air ducts, which are separate from the vents. Happy Frog is held off with audio lures and doesn't care about the heater. Mr. Hippo works the same way, but can be pushed back with heat. Pigpatch and Ned Bear match Mr. Hippo. Orville ignores the lures completely and only responds to the heater. And Mr. Hippo became a genuine fandom icon here, purely because when he kills you, he delivers an extremely long, extremely rambling monologue about friendship and ice cream that has nothing to do with anything. It is the best writing in the game. The rock stars all behave strangely, and I mean that fondly. Rockstar Freddy sits dormant in your office and eventually wakes up and demands 5 Faz coins, getting angrier the longer you take. And if you can't pay, he can be shorted out with the heater. Rockstar Bonnie appears in your office and refuses to leave until you find his guitar on the cameras and click it. Rockstar Chica comes down either hallway and is stopped by Double clicking a wet floor sign into place, because she will not walk on a wet floor. Rockstar Foxy's parrot flies through your office, and clicking it is a gamble. You might get power, a cooler room, a soundproofed office, or 10 coins, or a small chance of being killed outright. The rest are quick. Music Man reacts to noise by crashing his cymbals faster and faster until he finishes you, so you keep the room quiet. L-Chip turns up as an advert, covering your screen, with a close button on it, and you dismiss him the way you dismiss any other advert. Funtime Chica poses for imaginary paparazzi and floods your screen with flashbulbs. Molten Freddy uses the ducts, ignores snares, and announces himself with Funtime Freddy's voice. Scrap Baby appears across your desk and does nothing until she moves, at which point she needs a controlled shock. Scrap Trap, listed here simply as Afton, attacks once a night with a lot of noise and flickering lights, and you close the right vent door. And Lefty wakes up if it gets too hot or too loud, and needs the music box to settle, which you can do preemptively. The last one is Phone Guy, who rings you up occasionally, and who you have to mute immediately, because if you don't, he rambles for a long time, and the noise brings the house down. The 6 secrets that DD and XOR can call in are Shadow Bonnie, who blacks out your office for 10 seconds with no counter at all, Plush Trap, who appears on a camera and has to be scared off his chair, Nightmare Chica, whose jaws slowly close over your screen until you run the air conditioning, Bonnet, doing her nose thing, Mini-Renas, doing their screen thing, and Lulbit, doing the please stand by thing. Clear enough runs and you unlock a series of cutscenes that are almost all comedy. Bear of Vengeance, Toy Chica's high school years. Then you get an end credits screen with Golden Freddy on it, moving. Not walking, just shifting slightly, the way something does when it's not quite finished with you. Eyes black and glowing, drifting slowly backwards into the dark. Which is the point. Pizzeria Simulator was supposed to have set everyone free, and here is one soul that stayed, specifically to keep Afton company forever. Old Man Consequences says to leave the demon to his demons. Whoever this is has no intention of doing that. As epilogues go, that's about as clean as it gets. 2 games in a row that felt like proper endings, and then just like both times before, the series refused to stay dead. A bright white room, a Fazbear logo on the wall, a cheerful little loading jingle, and a headset strapped to your face. That is the friendliest opening in the entire series, and it is friendly on purpose. Fazbear Entertainment has commissioned a virtual reality game. Not for fun, for public relations. The story going round about their restaurants has got out of hand, and the official company line is that a rogue developer made a series of horror games that unfairly damaged their reputation. So they're funding a VR compilation that recreates the incidents in a light-hearted, obviously fictional way to get people laughing at the rumours instead of believing them. Which does mean that in universe, the first 6 games exist as games, which is a headache I'm choosing to enjoy rather than solve. You're a beta tester playing through it before release. Remember that name. The bulk of the game is recreations, and since everything in them behaves precisely as it always has, I'm going to skip all of it and stick to what's genuinely new. There's a set of dark rooms, small torch-based challenges. 2 of them are the Plush Trap and Nightmare Balloon Boy minigames from the 4th game, which quietly makes those Halloween characters properly canon at last. The third is brand new, Plush Baby. You're stood in the prize corner, defending yourself from possessed plush versions of Circus Baby, which work like the Freddles. They laugh or say something, and you have to find them in the room and hold a torch on them until they go. Some of them hide extremely well. Parts and Service brings back the maintenance format, this time on the 4 classics. You tune Bonnie's guitar, you deal with Chica's smell, which involves reaching inside her and which is deeply unpleasant. You repair Freddy's music box and pull children's belongings out of his chest, which is not a detail I needed. And Foxy, who is just broadly a mess. Follow the instructions carefully and precisely, and if you get it wrong, you start over. Once you've cleared enough, you unlock blacklight versions by flipping a lever next to the monitor. Bonnie and Chica turn neon, with a completely different set of tools, and Chica's now has the nightmare cupcake in it, and enormous insects you have to remove by hand. Freddy's becomes Shadow Freddy, surrounded by televisions and Nightmare Freddy's, and Foxy's is a burnt Foxy in a room that is actively on fire, mechanically identical, visually a different game. Vent repair is new, and there are 2, one with Mangle, one with Enart. You're crawling through ducts solving small puzzles under time pressure, and taking too long, or making a mess of it, gets you sent back to the start. Night Terrors is the best of the new content. It's the 4th game's format, with entirely new casts. The first has Funtime Freddy, with Bon Bon coming down the hallway, and Bonnet popping out of your drawers, and neither of them can actually kill you. They exist to waste your time, so Freddy can close the distance. Torch Bonnet, watch the hall for Bon Bon, and shut the bedroom door when Freddy gets near, or the wardrobe when he's in it. You know he's in there because Bonnet pops out of it first. The second brings back Nightmare, and putting him here matters for the same reason the Halloween lot mattered. He's not a bedroom character anymore. He comes from the right door, you see his eyes down the corridor, and shut the door. And meanwhile, tentacles are coming out from under the bed, out of the wardrobe, and down from the ceiling, sometimes simultaneously, and you have to light them up to make them retreat. The third is Circus Baby, and it's the most claustrophobic thing in the game, because you spend it inside the wardrobe. She wanders the bedroom, and when she notices you, her eyes go red, and she charges. You hold the door shut, but you can't hold it shut indefinitely, because Plushtrap is in the closet with you, and he gets more agitated the longer you're in there. You judge when to open the door by listening for his laughter and watching for visual glitches. It's a lovely bit of pressure design. And then Glitchtrap, who is either a wonderful piece of ambiguity or the single most frustrating loose end in the series, depending on your mood. When the studio was building the game, they used standard procedural generation algorithms, so the animatronic pathfinding would feel authentic. That was a standard design choice by the developers. Shortly afterwards, something appeared in the code, a figure in a Spring Bonnie-style mascot suit, glitching at the edges, deliberately placed there by the developers. Collect the hidden tapes and he grows less transparent and stands closer to you each time. He also seems to have got out of the game. The woman narrating the tapes talks about glitches and other strange occurrences in the game, rather than describing a colleague named Jeremy with his face cut open. The obvious reading is that this is Afton again, and there's plenty pointing that way, including how he's referred to in supplementary material, and the fact that he exists as a William Afton skin in Dead by Daylight. But we don't know how he survived Henry's fire. We don't know how a soul gets into source code. And since Secret of the Mimic came out, there's a substantial argument that Glitchtrap was never Afton at all. It's the most persistently unresolved character in the franchise. There are 3 endings. The main one has him lure you behind a curtain and stuff you into a Freddy suit on the show stage, which is a nasty echo of what Afton did to the children. Collect every tape, and you get a second, where he points at you, and then you're standing where he was, facing yourself, which reads as him having moved into your head, and taken the headset off with you. And there's a third with a specific button sequence where you find a door, and he appears in a gap in it, shushes you, and goes, which reads as him leaving and you staying. The DLC, Curse of Dread Bear, takes all this somewhere else entirely. It's set at Fall Fest 83, a Halloween event Fazbear apparently ran every year going back to the 70s. We learn later that Fiona Murray died at one of these in the 70s, most likely in a fire, and this DLC hints at it before anyone knew what the hint meant. The mascot is Dreadbear, a Frankenstein's monster take on Freddy with a bolt through his head and stitching, and he pops up throughout. There are 12 mini-games across 3 sections. Afraid of the Dark opens with Plushkin Patch, which is Plush Baby again, with the babies wearing masks. Then Pirate Ride, a rail shooter with Foxy, where you shoot targets on the high seas with unlimited ammunition, a bit like a ghost train with a gun. Score well enough and Helpy appears, and if he's pointing left, you unlock hidden areas, including a kitchen, a prop room, and a corridor from the second game. And then Corn Maze, which is the important one, because it's the first free roaming section in Help Wanted's history. You're chased through a maze field at night by Grim Foxy, a molten version of him, avoiding his line of sight by ducking behind cardboard cutouts. Step near a lit pumpkin or a flock of birds and the noise brings him. You collect a coloured key and head for the matching exit. Collect all 4 and go to the centre, and there's a 5th glitched key that opens a cellar containing a security mask, which meant nothing at all in 2019. That maze is very obviously a test build for Security Breach, and I mean that in every sense, including the parts where it stops working properly. Spooky Mansion has 4. Hallway is the 4th game's corridor on a stormy night, and you crawl forward, avoiding Nightmare Foxy, while making sure you're never in front of a window when the lightning goes. Nightmare Bonnie and Chica are out there too, and if you dawdle, Nightmare Freddy starts following you in the dark, and the only way to judge how close he is the sound of the Freddles. Build-A-Mangle puts you in a fulfillment centre, assembling an animatronic off 2 conveyor belts, 7 correct parts minimum, with Freddles coming down the line to put you off. Then there's Trick or Treat, which is the daftest thing in the DLC. 6 withered animatronics apparently live together in a house. You peek through the windows, work out which one is going to answer the door, and make sure you're wearing their mask when the timer runs out. Mangle blocks a window, so you can't see in, and you shift it by wearing the Mangle mask. I would genuinely watch a sitcom about that house. And the 4th is a parts and service job, bringing Dreadbear to life, which is exactly the joke you'd want. Danger Keep Out is 3 nights of the classic formula, and it's the best thing in the DLC. You're back in the original office, except there are no doors on it. What you have instead are light charges that scare things off, each costing a 5th of your power. So 5 uses, and the only way to recover them is switching the office power off completely. Night 1 is the Jacko pair. Night 2 adds Grim Foxy behind a curtain. Night 3 brings in Dreadbear, and light doesn't send him home, it only stuns him. So you're following heavy footsteps and waiting for a light bulb to shatter to tell you he's in the East Hall. Handing you the office from the first game, and then taking the doors off it, is a properly mean joke, and I enjoyed it more than I expected to. There was one more update at Christmas, which was mostly mouse and keyboard support. It also quietly added a billboard standing in the snow, advertising something coming soon, with a mall being built behind it. The first thing to understand about Security Breach is the size of the building. Every previous game has been a restaurant, or a house, or a small attraction. This is the Fazbear Mega Pizzaplex, and it is a shopping centre. Multiple floors, a bowling alley, a go-kart track, a cinema, an arcade the size of a warehouse, a daycare, a golf course, sewers underneath it. It's set in 2035, and it's styled after 70s and 80s glam rock. so everything is neon and glitter and enormous hair. Somebody looked at a family entertainment centre and decided the correct reference point was a stadium tour circa 1974, and against all reason, it works. The place is genuinely gorgeous. You're Gregory, a child, and nobody can agree on what he is. One reading is that he's homeless, which comes from one ending where he's living in a cardboard box in an alley outside. Another reading is that he's an animatronic, which comes from how implausibly capable he is, the total absence of any record of parents or how he got inside, his eyes glitching when certain things are near, and a stack of parallels to the crying child. Those two interpretations could not be further apart, and the game does nothing to help. You'll hear me say something like that a few more times before this section is done. Scott has said in an interview that the pandemic wrecked development and forced them to rush, and that what shipped is about half of what they intended. You can feel that everywhere, and most of all in the story. Glam rock Freddy malfunctions on stage and gets put into safe mode, and when he comes round there's a child in his stomach, and his entire band and the night guard want that child found. Because of safe mode, he decides to help you instead. You can climb into his chest cavity, and most things won't see you, and you can upgrade him with parts taken from the others. Chica's voice box lets him stun animatronics, Roxy's eyes let you see items through walls, and Monty's claws let you break through chains into new areas. He also needs charging, and if he runs flat while you're inside him, that's the end. There's a popular theory that he's Michael Afton, which I'd love to believe, and can't really support. There's very little in the game pointing that way, and the more likely answer is that none of the glam rocks are possessed at all. Vanessa is the guard, and Vanny is a woman in a white rabbit suit, and they're the same person. Glitch Trap got into her head during the events of the last game, and she's been working for him ever since. We learn from one ending that she's killed at least 9 people in this building, and she does almost nothing. She patrols with a torch. Vanny skips towards you in the first half of the game and can see through Freddy's stomach. Then in the second half becomes a fairly ordinary stealth obstacle. She's the villain of the marketing, the villain of the previous game, and the villain of the box art, and she has a handful of minutes of screen time and no resolution. One ending even seems to suggest she has a sister by way of showing her looking down at a body. Scott has since promised she'll come back properly, and I suspect that's why she's such a large part of the films. The band themselves are the best part of the game, because for the first time, these things have personalities. Glam rock Chica plays guitar and is, and I say this with affection, not the sharpest. She's distractible and permanently starving, and she will abandon whatever she's doing to eat out of a bin. She hunts by sound and sight, moves at a decent clip, and can be stunned with the Faz camera or the Faz blaster. Once you've taken her voice box, she looks considerably worse and behaves much the same. Roxanne Wolf plays a keytar and is a wolf version of Foxy, and she's magnificently insufferable. She talks to herself constantly about how brilliant she is, and there's a mirror in her green room that she's clearly spent a lot of time in front of. She's faster than Chica, she'll leap at you, and she tracks by scent as well as sound. Take her eyes and she goes blind, and rather than becoming easier, she becomes worse. Faster, more erratic, jumping more, running entirely on hearing, and sobbing the whole time about being ugly now. That's a rough one. And the bass player is Bonnie, except it isn't. It's Montgomery Gator, and your first introduction to Monty is the sound of him destroying his own room. He's violent, he gets angrier as the game goes on, he's faster than either of the others, he can leap across rooms, and neither the camera nor the blaster does anything to him. You need the shock stick for that. It's never stated outright, but the game strongly implies Monty killed Glamrock Bonnie to get his spot in the band. Decommission him, and he loses his legs, and then he drags himself along the floor, which puts him at exactly your eye level. Why any of them behave like this is left open. It could be Vanny tampering with them. It could be possession. It could be glitch trap. Since then, it's been suggested it might be something else entirely. The daycare has an attendant with two personalities. Sun runs things when the lights are on, and is a cheerful, anxious sort with a sunburst collar. The instant the lights go out, Moon takes over, and Moon is fast, strong, intelligent, apparently able to track you anywhere, and able to swing around the ceiling rigging. You restore 5 generators to bring the lights up and get Sun back, who then politely throws you out. Whether that's a fault, or whether Moon is simply what the daycare's night security is meant to be, has never been clarified. Music Man is back from Pizzeria Simulator, and he has clearly been through something, which, given where we last saw him, narrows the possibilities considerably. He turns up in vents and chases you. DJ Music Man is an enormous version of him, rebuilt as a spider, who plays an absolutely superb piece of music, while chasing you through the arcade, and I'd have happily lost to him more times than I did. The Pizzaplex also runs on STAFF bots. The acronym is never expanded, which I find quietly hilarious for a company this litigious. Security bots patrol with torches and raise an alarm that effectively teleports the nearest band member to you. Map bots hand out maps and always jump scare you the first time. Mop bots clean floors and raise the same alarm if you crowd them. Party bots block off areas until you find a pass. There are alien bots and an instructor bot inside the Faz Blaster arcade game. There's a single comedy bot doing stand-up in the theatre, occasionally swapped out for a magician bot. Driver assist bots exist, so short children can use the go-karts. There's a pizza bot you can actually control to make a pizza. There are server bots, some of which have been dumped in the sewer. There's a nanny bot in the daycare, attendant bots at the bowling alley who look distinctly like Circus Baby, and a fizz bot, a mask bot, and a head chef bot who matter more later. 2 groups are worth stopping on. The Nightmarian bots and the driver assist bots are the only staff bots that can kill you. They're only found in the sewers, their chests red, in your dreams, and when they get you, they play Nightmare and Nightmarian's audio from the 4th game. It's the first time that character has ever occupied a story-relevant position, and nobody has explained what they are. And the table bots, who are a group of decommissioned staff bots, sat around a table in the sewer, arranged in what looks a lot like a recreation of the Afton family. There are also groups of them elsewhere that appear to be conducting rituals over other bots. None of this is followed up. It's presented as background dressing, and it's some of the strangest imagery in the series. There are also glam rock endoskeletons down in the basement, and they only move while you aren't looking at them. Hold your eyes on one, and it stops dead. Turn away, and it has closed the distance. And caution bots, who stand around staring at you and do nothing at all, until the DLC hints that there might be souls inside them. Eventually, Freddy takes you to the exit and offers you the door, and there are 6 endings. 5 are comic book stills, which were thrown together as a prototype in the last month of development because the game had no endings at all. 2 got finished properly, the one flagged in the files as the true ending has you stay, take an old lift down under the go-kart track, and find the ruins of the Pizzeria Simulator building. Waiting there is Burn Trap, which is Afton again, his body visible in the gaps of a suit, and no explanation whatsoever for how he got here, how he rebuilt himself, or how he survived the fire. He tries to seize Glamrock Freddy through the televisions, and you burn them out one by one. That ending has since been effectively disowned. Scott has confirmed there was a serious miscommunication between him and Steel Wool, entirely nobody's fault, and that the intended character in that room was never Afton at all. What it should have been we'll get to in a moment. The other thing down there is canon, and it's called the Blob, or the Tangle. After Henry's fire, the souls did not all move on. What's left has fused into an enormous mass of animatronic parts with, somehow, Funtime Freddy running it. And you can pick out Circus Baby, Mangle, Bonnie, Chica, and dozens of others in it. The puppet is in there too, and her mask has no tears on it, which means Charlotte, at least, is gone. That single detail is doing enormous work. You slip past it inside Freddy. It attacks you through manholes during the burn trap fight, and if you win, it drags Afton into the fire itself. I'll be honest about how I feel here. Both of those things existing undoes the ending of Pizzeria Simulator. Henry's sacrifice released nobody, and Afton walked away from it. It's the one creative decision in this series I've never made peace with. The DLC clearly felt the same way, because it changed course almost immediately, and the ending the community now treats as canon is Princess Quest, where you free Vanessa, walk out of the building with Freddy, and the three of you eat ice cream on a hill. Ruin opens with a birthday party that went badly. Cassie had hers at the Pizzaplex because her dad was a technician there and could get the room for free. Nobody came. Not one of the children she invited turned up, and she sat in a party room on her own. Gregory found her and stayed with her, which does rather suggest he had been getting into that building long before the events of the last game. And then Roxanne Wolf, of all people, worked out what had happened and brought her favourite cake. That's the emotional engine of this whole DLC, and it's why Cassie is a far more likeable protagonist than Gregory ever managed to be. Sometime later, the Pizzaplex is abandoned and half collapsed. Fazbear's official line is that there was an earthquake. A fair few people think the blob caused it, and you can see it moving right at the start. Nobody ever repaired the band. Cassie goes in because Gregory called her for help. The place itself deserves a moment, because the art team did a lot of quiet work on it. The atrium has come down into a sinkhole. There's standing water where no water should be. Party banners still hanging. Signage still lit in patches, running off whatever power hasn't failed yet. Somebody's lunch, abandoned mid-meal. It's the same building as last time, with all the noise taken out of it. And it is far more unsettling empty than it ever managed to be full. Almost immediately, a mask bot hands her a security mask, and it's the same one that was sitting in that cellar at the end of the corn maze years earlier. It's called the Virtual Augmented Neural Network Integration, which shortens to VANI, which is similar to what Vanessa called herself. Cassie in the game actually comments on this. Putting it on implants a chip in her head, which lets her speak to Helpy and carry out technician work exactly like her father did. What that means for her is never addressed, and it very obviously should worry you. It also, for reasons entirely unexplained, lets her walk through walls and solid objects while it's on. At one point you pass through the mouth of an enormous glam rock endoskeleton that only exists inside the mask's version of the world. Later you can teleport with it. It's the strangest mechanic in the series, and I'm not sure the game knows what it is either. The actual work of the DLC is the nodes, and the loop is a good one. There are security nodes across the building, and each needs you to stand at a terminal, put the mask on, and solve something small inside that other version of the world, while whatever is in the room with you carries on with its evening. Mask on to see and to work, mask off to run. You've also got a Faz wrench which opens panels, restarts generators, and reboots animatronics, and it is comfortably the most useful object anybody in this series has ever been handed. 4 games of nothing but a torch and a door, and then Cassie turns up with a socket set. Your job is to disable a set of security nodes to free Gregory. Trying to stop you is MXES, which appears as an electric rabbit and which everyone initially read as Glitch Trap. It can't actually hurt you, but it can stop you removing the mask. By the end, you learn it's an artificial intelligence deliberately trying to prevent you from releasing something. Who built it and how it ended up down there is not addressed. The band are all here. Chica turns up early to give you a scare, and then later chases you round a rubbish area full of cupcakes. She still tracks sound, so you pull up a camera and use the intercom on a distant one to draw her off. Monty shoves you into water and later chases you through the back rooms in the same dragging state as before, slow but fatal, and when he's in the water, you simply avoid the green scales breaking the surface. Roxy is in a terrible state. She leads you around at first and you use recordings of Gregory's voice to make her smash open wooden doors for you. When she realizes you aren't Gregory, she stops, apologizes, and backs off. Then later, you have to switch her off, and while you're doing it, she recognizes Cassie, not as a target, as the girl whose party she saved. She tells her to come back and have another one, and says that this time, her friends will definitely show up. That is the most affecting scene in Five Nights at Freddy's, and it's in a free DLC about a robot wolf. Freddy's body is still here, and it does want to kill you, and there's a prototype label on his foot, which suggests it isn't our Freddy at all. But that label was only added in the final build, so the honest answer is that we don't know. Either way, you run. The daycare attendant is here, and once you restore the lights, you can reboot them with a wrench, merging Sun and Moon into a single personality called Eclipse. Once that's done, they don't attack you at all. There's an army of music men in different states of damage, all still drawn to sound, all still redirectable with the intercoms. And the caution bots are everywhere. But this time, facing away from you. And this time, you decommission them, and they cry while you do it. Get all of them and you find a hidden room containing Glamrock Bonnie's body. And at the end you find out that you were never rescuing Gregory. You were letting the mimic out. And it had been talking to her the whole way. Every message from Gregory, every bit of encouragement, every instruction about which way to go next. The mimic copies voices, and it had been using his to walk her, one careful step at a time, through the exact sequence needed to open its own door. That reveal works because you spend the entire DLC being quietly grateful for the company. Specifically M2, the second one, built by Edwin Murray in the 70s. The Mimic is a self-learning endoskeleton with an AI far beyond anything else in this universe, capable of copying voices it hears and behaviours it sees almost perfectly. The Mimic ended up replicating Edwin's late son David so well that he came to hate the imitation. So when his son David died unexpectedly, he built M2 to do the same thing again. And it copied David faithfully, because that is what it was designed to do. But there was nothing of David in it, because David had gone somewhere else. Edwin knew, and he could not forgive the machine for the imitation. So he beat it, repeatedly, for obeying its own programming. It learned from that too. It learned the shouting and the violence, because copying was all it could do. And when Edwin later had an accident in his own home and lay there asking it for help, M2 stood and watched and repeated back the things Edwin used to say to it. How it ended up sealed in a containment system under a shopping centre 40 or 50 years later. Nobody knows. There's speculation drawn from the books and no confirmation of any of it. There are 3 endings and no game after this to tell us which one holds. The most widely accepted is that Cassie runs, reaches the lift, and Gregory shuts it down and drops her back into the sinkhole rather than risk the mimic reaching the surface. She was his friend. She wasn't worth that. At the bottom, a voice calls out to her because Roxy was reactivated rather than destroyed. Whether the voice reassuring her down there belongs to Roxy is a separate question, and one the game is content to leave sitting. Either way, that's where it leaves things. Ruin is short, it's the tidiest piece of storytelling Steel Wool have managed, and it answered one very large question by opening about 9 more, which is roughly the going rate around here. Underneath the Pizzaplex, well below the go-kart track and the sewers, there is a burnt-out pizzeria that nobody has touched since Henry set fire to it. That's where you spend the ending of the game. It's the pizzeria simulator building, or what's left of it, and Fazbear have quietly turned the shell of it into a workshop. Salvage racks, charging pods, a maintenance bay, strip lighting. The floor above was selling pizza to families in 2035, and this floor is where the company keeps the things it would rather nobody photographed. And there's one mechanic down here that does more work than everything else combined, and it's the mask. You're wearing a technician's fanny mask throughout, and most of the mini-games are accessible while it's on, but you can take it off. And when you do, the room around you changes, and a different set of games becomes available. It's a soft fourth wall break that quietly tells you this is not the cheerful staff training package it's pretending to be. You're Henry, working in a dedicated pizzeria facility built to lure and destroy the animatronics, not in any confirmed location beneath the pizzaplex. 6 sections, 40 minigames, and a roster that leans heavily on the fun times, the rock stars, and the glam rocks, largely because the first help wanted barely touched any of them. Staff only opens with cold storage, where you retrieve a birthday cake out of Glamrock Freddy's chest. You replace his batteries, remove his eyes, boop his nose to open his faceplate, and press a button inside his mouth, all while keeping his temperature in a narrow band, because too hot or too cold, and he wakes up. Then the first aid games, where you perform medical procedures on Helpy, their trial and error. They all end with giving him a sweet, and doing them badly attracts whatever is roaming nearby. First it's Pig Patch, later it's Lefty and Scrap Baby. You keep a mask on Helpy that releases a calming gas, and when they come at the vents, you look straight at them while that mask is on, and they leave. Fizzy Faz is the most tedious thing in the game, and I say that as someone who did all of them. You're mixing drinks to order for staff bots against a clock. Get too many wrong, or move too slowly, and they turn on you. In later nights, overworked staff bots start turning into Nightmarion bots, and you have to give them breaks. In Fizzy Faz, Chica shows up on nights 4 and 5, and you have to deliberately trash ingredients into the bin to lure her to the disposal area instead of interrupting the queue. Endo Warehouse has you playing a small game to help an endoskeleton develop its brain, while other endos creep up behind you and get flashed with the Faz camera. What makes all of this land better than it should is the framing. On paper, you are doing staff induction, cheerful prompts, a scoring system, a little congratulations noise when you get something right. In practice, you're being talked through the maintenance of machines that have killed people in a building the company officially says burned down, by a training package that keeps insisting everything is perfectly fine. The gap between the tone and the content is the entire joke, and it holds up across 40 mini-games, which is longer than it had any right to. The sister location wing is mostly recreations. Ballora Gallery is the same crawl, except now it's timed and stepping off the path gets you baby instead of Ballora. The breaker room is the same power restoration, with the same megaphone, and in hard mode, Funtime Freddy is swapped for Yendo, who is much harder to see and much easier to hear. The private room is Night 5 against Ennard again, with Ballora replacing him on hard, and Biddy-Babs and Mini-Arenas draining your power until you shock them. The Mini-Arenas can also sit on your door to stop it closing, at which point you simply pick them up and throw them, which made me laugh out loud. The genuinely new one is the Funtime Gang Office, with Freddy, Foxy, Chica, Bonbon and the Cupcake. Freddy and Foxy behave as they always have. Chica is new. She wants the cupcake off your desk, and she comes down whichever hallway it's sitting nearest. If she gets close, you move the cupcake to the other side, and she has to go all the way round. If she reaches the office anyway, you hand it over and she resets, or you shut the door. The Fazcade is hosted by Carney, a rockstar animatronic with a great deal of Lefty and rockstar Freddy in him. Its centerpiece is Faz Blast from Security Breach, with Dreadbear commentating on how you're getting on, and the harder versions of it get properly ridiculous because they stack. First you're shooting stars, then you're shooting stars and plush babies, then you're doing that while also playing the first game, then that, plus the second game, plus popping balloons with a dart gun. By the end you're running 4 things at once, and I lost every single attempt. Shoot a rocket down in each of them and Carney catches fire, which opens a final stage in a burnt-out arcade, against a spring-trap cutout you dismantle with balls, then darts, then the blaster. The rest of the arcade is gentler. Bonka-Bon is whack-a-mole, with Bon-Bon worth 1, Bonnet worth 3, and Helpy costing you 3, which I discovered the hard way. Music Time has you matching DJ Music Man's tunes against visual prompts, and a harder run adds mini music men that need flashing. And Bonnie Bowl is a working bowling alley where Moon turns up to bother you and plush babies come charging down the lane, and both problems are solved by bowling at them, which I find very funny. Backstage has arts and crafts with Sun, who gives you instructions and then shreds whatever you make, which is a bit rude. Get it wrong and he handles it, and on hard he becomes Moon and you go back to using the torch. The salon has you doing makeup on staff bots and then on Roxy, both intact and ruined, matching what's on the computer against a timer. And on the harder versions you also have to play her a recording of her own compliments to keep her calm. And food prep starts at El Chips, serving to order, then moves to pizza, where Chica sneaks up behind you to steal ingredients and has to be looked at directly. Hard mode has you cooking for Chica specifically while fending off glam rock endos. The ticket booth has a carousel repair where you're replacing batteries and wiring while Moon hunts you, and on hard he becomes Jacko Moon, and the carousel spins fast enough to make aiming a torch genuinely difficult. There's Captain Foxy's log ride, which is the pirate ride again, with Helpy steering. And there's Mystic Hippo in the lobby, a fortune teller who tells you how to find the plushes for the secret ending, and who is a new mediocre melody, possibly related to Mr. Hippo. There's also a run of hidden plush toys across the whole thing, which is what Mystic Hippo keeps nudging you towards. Collecting them means replaying games you've already beaten, which I'd normally grumble about, except the second time through is when you start noticing how much of the incidental dialogue is Fazbear talking to its own staff about liability. Both endings appear to be canon. In one, a hand comes out of a charging pod, Glitch Trap's hand, and Night Marion staff bots swarm you. Then the view shifts, and you're looking out through the eyes of the mask bot that gives Cassie the mask in ruin, which means this game happens before that one, which means the man you have been playing as a Fazbear technician is the one who ends up handing Cassie the thing that gets her trapped down there. In the other, you're inside a claw machine, and a hand comes down and takes a Glitch Trap plush outside, where a giant Vanny picks it up and crushes it. Either Glitch Trap is finished or Vanessa has finally got him out of her head. As usual, nobody says. We're actually starting out in the modern era. That's the year on the screen when this one starts. And it's worth sitting with for a second because it makes this the earliest point in the entire timeline. Everything we've talked about tonight happens after it. Fredbear's family diner hasn't had its accident yet. Charlotte is still alive. William Afton is, as far as anyone knows, a man who makes children's entertainment for a living. You're Arnold, a Fazbear technician, and you've just finished a 36-hour shift when dispatch rings with one more job. Edwin Murray has died, his manor is abandoned, and the company would like everything of theirs retrieved from it, including the schematics for a certain prototype endoskeleton. We learn very little about Arnold, which is fine, because the building is the character. Murray's costume manor is a workshop full of mascot suits, and the mimic's entire method is to put one on. Anyone. It wears a poodle called Sharpie, a hedgehog, a lemur, a bee, a jester, a set of mushroom people, and a handful of unnamed things including an elephant, a dog, a penguin, a duck, and a lion, several of which it also used back in the Pizzaplex. Some of the suits have no outer covering at all and are just stuffing on a frame, which is somehow worse. You know it's coming because there's a mechanical startup sound, and then one of the suits in the room begins walking. From there you track it by footsteps. It reacts almost exclusively to loud noise and line of sight. So you pull it around the building with wind-up toy mice and big red buttons mounted on signs. If it spots you, it walks quickly at first, then breaks into a proper sprint. The rest of your encounters are boss fights, and every one of them raises the question of how the mimic got inside something that size. Jackie is a jack-in-the-box who hands you a crank and then pursues you through a set-piece chase, and all you can do is run. She's crushed by falling rubble at the end of it. Big Top is a large spider-like animatronic, similar to DJ Music Man, and you play carnival games around him while the power keeps failing. When the lights go out, he plays a music box and sweeps the room with two enormous searchlight eyes, and being caught in that beam ends it. The room is full of mannequins that talk if you get too close, which brings him straight over. He leaves through the ceiling, and you meet him again on the roof, and he goes the same way Jackie did. And Nurse Dolly, who has defibrillator paddles for hands and whose job in this house is to repair things or recycle them into other things. She comes in 3 parts. The first has her running a powered track around the room at real speed, which sounds far worse than it plays because she can only travel in the direction she's pointing. Then she's off the rail chasing you through the recycling area while you gather materials, and once you've got enough, you can lure her onto a conveyor belt and pelt her with rubbish until she goes into a molten pit, which you would assume finishes her. It does not. She comes back out of it melting and chases you through the building, leaving a trail, and this time she can come through walls. You reach the lift and she lands on the roof of it, and the system reads the extra weight and refuses to move, so you repair it while she's up there, and then it fires upward fast enough to crush her against the ceiling. There's one boss that has nothing to do with the mimic, and it's the best thing in the game. White Tiger is in the basement. It resembles the animatronic from one of the tales from the Pizzaplex books, and unlike absolutely everything else here, it doesn't behave like a machine at all. It teleports whenever the lights go out. You track it by 2 glowing eyes and a child's giggle, and it hallucinates itself onto your screen to make seeing anything harder. To get through, you run between pools of light as they come on, and you never linger in the dark or stand under a light that's about to die. Scattered through those rooms are star orphans, small glowing plush toys. White Tiger will not touch you while you're carrying one, and collecting them opens up the rest of the basement. The White Tiger plush was David Murray's favourite toy. The star orphans were his as well, which means in all likelihood that the thing in the basement is David, and has been down there the entire time. So the man spent years building machines to hold what was left of his family, and took his temper out on one of them for not being close enough, and the answer was 2 floors down the entire time, wandering about in the dark with the lights going on and off. There is no cutscene for that. You work it out from a plush tiger and a handful of glowing toys, and it lands harder for it. There are 2 smaller encounters. Party Time Chica is the oldest version of Chica anyone has seen, from back when she belonged to Chica's Party World, and she's on roller skates. The first time you meet her, she skates around and chases you in the open. The second time, she's got an army of cupcakes on legs with her, which shriek if you get near and bring her over, and you hide in lockers. And there's concept art in the building for a Mr. Chicken, a Mrs. Snake, and a Mrs. Burger who never made it into the game. Around the manor, you'll find Murray's Digitype bot, whose job seems to be writing letters and sorting post and generally minding the place, and who looks like an early ancestor of the staff bots. He's torn to pieces by Jackie almost immediately. There's Mr. and Mrs. Helpful, a white bear and a white bear with purple accents voiced by Edwin and Fiona, who exist to give you information and who also run the carnival games. And there's Sleepy Moon, an enormous glowing moon mascot suit connected to the Storytime showroom, where the floor gave way and dropped the giant moon prop through the building. It follows you slowly, singing a lullaby. Sleepy Moon is not controlled by the mimic because it's buried too deep to reach. A lot of people think it's Edwin, on the basis that the imagery of this game consistently casts Fiona as the sun and Edwin as the moon. Nobody knows. Foxy and a pirate crew turn up in the theatre and promptly fall apart as the theatre collapses. There's a Springlock suit called Captain Springlock, who is a pirate, and who is some variety of dog. He comes with a ball launcher, which you use to operate the theatre machinery. And late on, you reach a prototype of what will eventually be the first Freddy Fazbear's Pizza, containing 4 Springlock suits, a proto-Fred Bear, something that must be Spring Bonnie, a crocodile that looks suspiciously like an early Monty, and a dog called Bub. There are also unfinished versions of Freddy, Bonnie, Chica, and Foxy in there. No Golden Freddy, none of it is explained. And there's M1, the first mimic, codenamed F10N4, which is Fiona written in numbers. She was built after Fiona died, so David would have someone while Edwin worked. And then Edwin discovered he could hear his wife's voice in her at certain frequencies, and that was that. Compared to M2, she's kind and thoughtful, and by the end of the game, she's trying to stop him. There are 3 endings, and no consensus at all on which one counts. In one, you hand your data driver over to dispatch as instructed, then find out that dispatch lost contact with you hours ago, and you have spent most of the night taking orders from M1, which is actually an ending from Into the Pit. You're fired for losing company property, and then you check the mirror in your van and the mimic is in the back of it. In another, you run a program that takes you through the prototype pizzeria to Edwin's house and blows the whole place up, and you drive away, and the mimic gets into the van anyway and puts you into a ditch, which is from Into the Pit. And then there's the last one. You get into a room you shouldn't be able to reach, which turns out to be a bedroom almost identical to the one from the 4th game. You put the white tiger plush on the pedestal, M2 comes out of the wardrobe, and instead of running, you play him a bedtime story, read in Fiona and Edwin's voices. He gets smaller, like M2 does in Into the Pit. He behaves like a child. He picks up the tiger, lies down, says he loves them, and shuts down. That one can't be canon because he's still very much active 50 years later, in the main timeline, unlike in Into the Pit. It's in the game anyway, and I don't think that's careless. The mimic is fairly clearly where all of this is heading next, so a scene showing what he could have been instead is probably worth keeping hold of. And that's every animatronic in the main line of games and spin-offs, from a rabbit with a guitar in 2014 to a machine in a poodle costume in 1979, which is a sentence I did not expect to be saying when I started making notes for this. There's plenty we didn't get to. If FNAF World is its own peculiar thing, Special Delivery has a roster nobody talks about. The Into the Pit game came out in 2024, and I've deliberately left it alone tonight, because whether it properly counts is still an open argument. Then there's the Silver Eyes books, Tales from the Pizzaplex, and Fazbear Frights, which between them contain more animatronics than several of these games put together. Any of those could be an evening on their own, and probably will be. The series is still going too, though what's next is a kart racer, which I think is the most Five Nights at Freddy's development possible. 12 of these things on go-karts with a night shift mode that turns the race into something else. Halfway through, I have no idea what to do with that information, and I've been thinking about it for weeks. What stays with me, after going through the whole lot in order, is how much of it started as a man with no plan making a game about a rabbit that moves when you aren't looking. None of this was designed. It accumulated, which is probably why the roster is the size it is, and why half of them contradict each other, and why I still can't get through the list without checking. Anyway, that's the lot. Sleep well.